Thank you all for coming, first of all. It's wonderful to have you all here. We did not know what to expect. We didn't know what the weather was going to do, so we appreciate you all being here today. So this project is a joint venture between the Great Smoky Mountain Heritage Center and Maryville College, as many of you know. So, and many of you are alum, and many of you have also helped make this project happen. It's going to be my pleasure to introduce Cole Piper. And Cole Piper is the gentleman who asked everyone to support this project. He came to me and said, Bob, I'd like to save this cabin, this Isaac Anderson cabin. I said, well, I don't know Isaac Anderson. Who is that? He said, well, he was, sorry, true story. At least I admit it, right? So I know a lot about Isaac Anderson now. But anyway, he said, well, I'd like to save this cabin. I said, well, what do you want to do? And he said, well, would you be willing to have it down there at the center? So we thought about it, talked about it, sure enough. And then he said, and what I'll do, because he knows how I'm about raising money, he said, and I promise I'll raise the money. I said, okay, you got a deal. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Cole. He made this happen.
Let me correct one thing. I didn't promise that I'd raise the money. Bob said, I'm not raising the money. Well, first of all, thank you all for being here. I mean, this really tickles me to see so many friends and colleagues and Maryville College alumni and people who are interested in the preservation of history. So thank you for being here. Over the last, I guess, 2 or 3 weeks, people have asked me, what are my feelings and what do I think about this? And I said, well, there's two words that come to mind: amazing and grateful. And so obviously, to me, standing here today, it is amazing that over the last year and a half, we have taken a cabin that was condemned, was about to be torn down. We've moved it from East Knoxville to the Heritage Center, and we're now ready for people to come and see. So, that absolutely amazes me that we're able to do this. But I think what I want to focus on is gratitude. And by way of a chronology, I'm going to tell you kind of my gratitude. And the one thing that I hesitate to start naming names, because invariably I'm going to leave someone out that was critical to this, but there's several people that I do need to mention. The first person is Karen Eldridge at Maryville College. Karen's the director of marketing. In July of 2017, I was minding my own business, summer vacation. I get this phone call from Karen. And it really, when I said hello, I could tell she was kind of frantic at that time. And she said, Cole, we got to do something. She said, the Isaac Anderson cabin, which I'd heard about, but really had never been out there, didn't know a lot about it, but I knew that it existed. She said that the Knox Heritage has had it on their Fragile 15 for a number of years. We've tried to do something with it, and nobody's really been able to get anything back. And I've been informed that if in 6 weeks there is not a concrete plan, then this cabin's going to be torn down and hauled away to the dump. Well, to me, as a Maryville College graduate, as someone who really loves history and preservation of history, to me, that's unforgivable. If we had the opportunity to save something, and just because of inaction, we didn't do that. So, first of all, I thank Karen for bringing that to the attention. And then, Bob is being a little generous when he says what he did about his willingness. Bob, absolutely, when I called him, and he understood, and I explained to him pretty quickly who Isaac Anderson was. He said, absolutely. He said, we cannot let this be lost to history. And he said, in fact, because all I wanted to do is I just wanted to bring it up here to the center. And any of you that have been to the center before know that we've got about a dozen period buildings behind the museum. But you can't see them unless you go through the museum. So Bob said, if you're able to make this happen, he says, not only do we want it, but we will put it in a prominent location so anybody that travels this road, and those of you obviously know that this is a main entrance, especially if you want to go to Kate's Cove. So we have tens of thousands of people go by here. He said, I'll put it in a prominent location. And so, Bob, I really appreciate that. Well, so I now knew that we needed to save the cabin, and we had a place to put it. But the real critical thing was who was going to do this. And I saw him here earlier. Where's Freddie Hahn? Where's Freddie? Oh, there he is. Okay. Freddie is the person who has been a part of every single one of our buildings here as far as restoration, reconstruction. And I called Freddie as soon as I realized the urgency of this. And I said, Freddie, I said, how you doing? And his comment to me was, I am really jammed up with work. And I said, uh-oh. And I said, well, I've got a favor to ask. And I explained the situation. I said, we've got to do something in 6 weeks. He said, call me back in a couple hours. I call him back. He said, I can start right away. He had rearranged his schedule. He put some jobs off. And he said that I'll do this. I said, well, what you need to do is you need to take this cabin down and you need to move it to Townsend, Tennessee, to the Heritage Center. Of course, he knew exactly where we were talking about. And for those of you that have never been involved in cabin restoration, it's not just a simple project to take it down. You take pictures, you have to number each log. It's like once you take it down, then it's putting that puzzle back together again. And so Freddie and his crew just absolutely did a spectacular job. And so, thank you very much, Freddie, for doing that. So when I get back from vacation, of course, the first thing I want to do is come up here and take a look at this cabin. And I come back and I see out in the field here a big pile of rocks and a big pile of wood with a tarp over it. And I said, well, that's Isaac's cabin. And Bob informs me that he's in the middle of a project of raising funds, so he can't do it. And I talked to Susie, and bless her heart, is Susie here? Susie Booker?
Oh, yeah.
Well, I'll tell you, Susie, I'm sure you're just thrilled that I am done coming to your office and asking for advice. But Susie explained that she was in a campaign and had a project, and so she couldn't raise the money. And everybody looked at me and said, we got to raise the money. And I said, well, this isn't what I do. I don't know how to do this. But, I had a love for this college. I had a love for the preservation of history. I said, well, I'll give it a stab. So, Susie, my next grateful is the fact that you were willing to put up with me coming to your office asking for advice. I was back maybe about a week and my phone rang. And there was a woman there that didn't know. She introduced herself, said, my name is Claire Harden, and I'm a Maryville College graduate. And I read in the paper where you are working on preserving Isaac Anderson's cabin, and I want to help. And I thought, hallelujah, somebody has reached out, and I haven't had to go to them. And Claire said, and by the way, I'm a member of Second Presbyterian Church in Knoxville, and in case you didn't know it, but Isaac was involved in the founding of that church also, and I think I can help raise money through our church. So to Claire, I am very, very grateful, and she has been a support all the way through this project. My good friend Andy Simon, who in my former life, he and I worked together building stores, and he also works at the Heritage Center. And so working with Freddie and Bob, he was kind of my eyes on the site here and really was a great help and benefit to me. So I really appreciate that. But most of all, I appreciate the willingness for Maryville College alumni, for community leaders, for friends of mine who have made a multi-year commitment to help pay for this. The cabin's done, but it's not totally paid for. So I will make a plea if anybody is so inclined to still want to make a donation to the Heritage Center, it would be much appreciated. But having said that, we are almost at our target. We needed to raise $150,000. But when I first heard that, I was very, very concerned because having never done this before, I came up here and I said, well, if we don't raise $150,000, people can see Isaac Anderson's cabin. There'll be a sign on top of a tarp out here that says, this is where Isaac lived. So, but the real beauty, and I know there's many of you here who have stepped up, have given money, have understood the importance and the significance of saving this cabin. And when you have a chance to go in here, I think you're going to be mighty proud about what our archives and marketing department did as far as copy that's going to be on the wall and photographs. And so it's a real testament to to the collaborative effort of everybody stepping up and saying, we're not going to let this be gone to history. And you know what? I think all of us can celebrate today for future generations, especially Maryville College students who might ask, you know, I hear Isaac Anderson's cabin is still here. Where is it? We can say it's in Townsend, Tennessee, instead of saying it's on an ash heap somewhere over buried in East Knoxville. So thank you all for being here today, and especially thank you for your commitment and what you've done to help this happen.
Thank you, Cole. And on the program, it says that I'm delivering remarks, but really I'm here to give thanks. And like Cole, I'm worried about forgetting people. So I brought a reminder up here that I'm going to keep an eye on. As is true with anything that you do that matters, there's a lot of people who made it possible. There's a long list of supporters on the back of your program. And if we missed you, let us know. I'm going to only take time to recognize a few of them but please know that everyone's appreciated. First of all, Cole Piper. On behalf of Maryville College and the entire community, thank you. Now, one of the things Cole did back in a previous life, he confessed to me, was he actually helped back in 1976 organize a bicentennial celebration. And so a few years ago, when I was getting started trying to organize the Maryville College bicentennial celebration, Cole was one of the first people I asked to get involved. We knew that he's great with marketing promotion. We know he's passionate about history and milestone events. We did not know, however, that we were going to turn him into a fundraiser and a home builder. A liberal arts education, you can do anything. Maryville College education. So, since he has graduated, he's done a lot of things. I know that he will describe this as a labor of love, and his passion for this project has infected everyone, not only for this specific activity, but really permeated all the activities around the bicentennial. Next, Bob Patterson and the board and staff of the Great Smoky Mountains Heritage Center, thank you. Your generosity, your cooperation, and your total belief in this project. I mean, they've never done something like this before, right next to the road. It really is meaningful that our founder's cabin not only lives on and tells that story, but does so in such a prominent way to everyone that visits this community. The Heritage Center, as was already mentioned, has a small crew of people who do this regularly. Amazing work. I just have to recognize once again the work of Freddie Hahn and his entire team. Freddie, that's amazing. Thank you. Now, one of the challenges with a more than 200-year-old building is some of the wood gets rotten, and you've got to replace it or augment or supplement to make it work. Where do you find that kind of historic wood? Well, in this community, we're very blessed because Marty and David Black live here, and they are longtime generous friends of the college. They're longtime community leaders. They made a contribution to wood that helps make this cabin look as good and new and updated as possible. Thank you, Marty and David. The congregation of Second Presbyterian Church, and Claire is here, and she'll bring some greetings from them. They also are celebrating their bicentennial, or just finished celebrating their bicentennial, and I can't think of a better way to honor that joint bicentennial than this project that honors the phenomenal person who helped start both institutions and has had such a lasting legacy on this entire region. When you go inside, you will get to read about Isaac Anderson and some of the history of the time. What you read is the work of Maryville College students, faculty, and others, and some of the displays. So I just want to make sure I get my list. You'll hear in a little while from Lenny Lively, a current student, one of our history professors, Dr. Aaron Astor, other people that I want to recognize that are here, our archivist, Amy Lundell, also an alum, Maryville College historian and former college registrar, Martha Hess, also an alum, and a whole lot of others in archives. They provided suggestions about interior displays, and more than that, they helped find really unique content and figure out how to display it well. And last but not least, thank you to every single person who contributed financially to this project. It wouldn't have been possible without every single one of you. It really matters. Now, I'm not a historian, but I checked. If my dates are correct, Isaac Anderson built this cabin when he was 22 years old. He lived in it for about a decade. During that time, he studied and prayed and ate and slept here. But mostly what he did was leave every morning to go out, and in the words that he often said, he went out to do good on the largest possible scale. So this cabin, which he lived in and called home, is going to be here for decades to come. People passing by who hadn't thought about it will stop here. Some people will know about it and come here to see it. Some of those people will be children. Many of them will be children. Now, selfishly, I hope some of those children get interested in Maryville College and end up enrolling there. But regardless, I think that I can confidently say that those children have a chance to be inspired by the example of Isaac Anderson and the example of the many people here today who are doing so much to keep his legacy alive and to keep history alive for all of us now and for the future. Thank you all very much.
I've waited for this day for a very long time, ever since Eric Villa informed the college alumni board that the cabin existed, and that's at least 10 years ago. A friend sent me the news clipping about the cabins having been rescued, and I didn't know Cole at that time, as he said, but I did just call him to say thank you. And you know, when you make a call like that, you know what often follows from that. When I told him I was a part of Second Presbyterian Church, my fate was sealed. Isaac Anderson, as Dr. Bogart said, founded Second Presbyterian Church in Knoxville in 1818. And we had a wonderful year of celebration last year. Special events and projects. Our co-chairman wrote a history of the church and shared it with the congregation over a period of months. And the congregation learned what an extraordinary man Isaac Anderson was, organizing and pastoring multiple churches, covering a 150-mile circuit 1 week out of every month, all at the same time of teaching his pupils and his ministry students and founding an academy that became Maryville College. Following his example of promoting education, part of our 200th anniversary celebration was the establishment of a scholarship which benefits the University of Tennessee Knoxville students and Maryville College students. And we were pleased to award our first 2 scholarships to Maryville students. Our congregation understood the importance of saving this piece of history of our founder. The session of the church authorized a substantial donation to its reconstruction. Individual members of the church donated, and some former members. For me personally, my involvement in this rests on this. I entered Maryville College in 1953, and in 1960, my husband and I joined Second Presbyterian Church. Isaac Anderson's legacy through those two institutions has shaped my adult life, and I'm grateful. And today, I'm a happy woman.
I think it's altogether fitting that this cabin had to be disassembled bit by bit and then carried down to this place, meticulously reconstructed. In many ways, not only is that the story of the commitment that Isaac Anderson himself showed, but it's also in many ways the story of the people who came and settled in this area, who came with Isaac Anderson, his family, his wife, and the others who came down, were actually migrated several times over the centuries from the lowlands of Scotland, the Scottish-English borderlands, members of the Presbyterian Church who had gone to Northern Ireland in the 17th century, and then 150 years later gone mostly to Pennsylvania, and then down the Great Valley through Virginia, where Isaac was born in Rockbridge County near Lexington, Virginia, like many other Ulster Scots Presbyterians, before continuing this journey down here into East Tennessee and settling in Knox County. It's no coincidence that so many of the early institutions of higher learning in the state of Tennessee were founded by Presbyterians. Samuel Carrick, who was the man who essentially trained Isaac Anderson here, is founded Blount College, which is sort of the forerunner to the University of Tennessee. Samuel Doak, Balch of Tusculum College, and others. Many of them were Presbyterians. Also, many of them, like Isaac Anderson, were autodidacts. They had taught themselves. And one of the most amazing stories about him was this is a guy who founded a college, who founded a seminary, and had no formal training beyond Liberty Hall Academy, which is now Washington Lee University, by the way, but had no formal training above anything remotely like a high school level. He taught himself. He didn't just teach theology. He didn't just teach religious courses. He taught geology. He taught mathematics. He taught Greek and Latin. He was the only professor at Maryville College for several years. That this institution survived so long is utterly remarkable. That this cabin survived so long is utterly remarkable. But in some ways, that's all part of, I think, the same blessing that really has lived through Isaac Anderson. We should not even speak of him in the past tense in this way. We should speak of that spirit in the present tense. When you go into this building, you will see the laying out of his life, and broadly speaking, the college, his first 100 years. You'll see a discussion of his childhood, coming down to Virginia, settling in the grassy valley of East Knox County. This cabin built in 1802, which he built. His father had built a cabin a year earlier. He also constructed what we call the Log College or the Union Academy. By the way, the Log College was also the term originally used to describe Princeton University, which was the first Presbyterian seminary in the country. Southern and Western Theological Seminary that Isaac Anderson founded became the second seminary in the United States in the Presbyterian Church. He had worked, traveled all around two churches in Knox County, and then in 1812 was called by Gideon Blackburn to take over at New Providence Presbyterian Church. And even before 1819, when he created Maryville College, he had already made history, and he had already demonstrated a spirit that would stand the test of time. I mean, in a time today when we look back at people in prior years, and we often look with some degree of shame or embarrassment, Isaac Anderson is a man whose life stands the test of time, even by our own values. Here was a man who went out and served everybody. This was a man who, the Cherokee, who people have mixed opinions about relationships with Cherokee, to put it mildly, and he was more than willing to train and serve people of the Cherokee community, often right in this area. He also, by the way, built roads through here. I mean, this man did many different things. And of course, African Americans. I mean, this is one of the most amazing stories as well. One of his first students was a man named George Erskine, who was a slave, who he immediately freed and then trained him for the Presbyterian ministry. Erskine would later on move to Liberia, and his daughter at one point would present a quilt to Queen Victoria. I mean, this is a remarkable story. This is a man who genuinely believed that the Spirit of God commands that all are equal are equal on this earth, and he did what he could to oppose the institution of slavery and to support equality as much as he possibly could. And that carried him through his ministry, founding the seminary and founding the college. And then, of course, as he was here, he discovered that the real need was maybe not even just a seminary, but was an academy to train people before they could even be ready to go to college. So for a long time, Maryville College was not just a seminary. In fact, the seminary didn't really last all that long. It was not even just a college, but it was also a preparatory academy, which lasted all the way into the 1920s. So this, inside the cabin, there are plaques in here that tell the story of this first century. It also has one about Second Presbyterian Church, but it tells the story of that first 100 years. So it includes not only this early period, but later on in this century, after the American Civil War, Maryville College would admit women and would admit African Americans again as it moved to its new college, a new campus location, partly with funding from the Freedmen's Bureau, which was designed to serve freed slaves. And so William Henderson Franklin was one of the first African American graduates in the state of Tennessee, and Mary Wilson was the first female graduate of a college in the state of Tennessee in 1875. And then the story continuing to the 1890s with the Japanese student Kin Takahashi, who I think is very familiar to all of us who spent any time at Maryville College. But once again, this incredible amount of service and commitment and achievement for one person with all of this spirit was remarkable, and it was infectious. I mean, building, of course, the YMCA on campus, and I think, of course, that's the spirit not only Isaac Anderson showed. I think we could say that the spirit that Cole Piper has shown in rescuing this building. I mean that. I think he has really lived that. I think we've seen that living on there. But it's true, and that's, I think, the kind of leadership that we today try to cultivate on the campus to this day. So what I want to do now is introduce Lenny Lively, a student now who is telling the story through creative process, and I'm going to let him take it from here.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for being here today. My name is Leonard Lively, and for the past year, I feel like I've been living in the life of Isaac Anderson. It feels that way at times. For my senior thesis at Maryville College, I decided to write a musical with my sister depicting the life of Isaac Anderson and the founding of Maryville College for our bicentennial celebration. At the beginning stages of this project, I resigned myself to the college archives and I read every bit of information about Isaac Anderson that I could get my hands on. And this led me to an appreciation for Isaac Anderson and what I felt was a genuine connection with him. And as crazy as it sounds, through dramatizing his life, I feel like I know Isaac Anderson, even though he's been dead for 162 years. Many of us remember him because of the enduring legacy he built in Maryville College. But I'd rather reflect not on what he built, but who he was in a more personal sense. Most of us here are familiar with his altruistic maxim, do good on the largest possible scale. This directed every action of his life, but a less widely known idea that Isaac Anderson held close was a notion he termed disinterested benevolence, which is doing good with no regard for personal gain, but instead doing good for the sake of doing good. He preached disinterested benevolence from the pulpit, taught it from the schoolroom platform, and he embodied it every day of his life by ministering and teaching tirelessly to everyone who wanted to learn, regardless of their race, ethnicity, gender, or socioeconomic status. Isn't it amazing that we're still talking about a man's benevolent action 200 years later? It's remarkable, and a credit to him. And I want to thank Isaac Anderson for lending me his story to tell My musical is called Sturdy as a Rock. It runs March 30th and 31st at the Clayton Center for the Arts. Each day there's a 2 o'clock matinee and an 8 o'clock showing in the evening. And I hope to see all of y'all there. Thank you very much.
Somebody in the just want to get too close. Try to keep the same distance. Exactly. Are you ready? On three. 1, 2, 3. Yeah. Very good. Very good.